Welcome, all you wonderful and beautiful people. Today's topic will be about sex during the Middle Ages. In the minds of the general public, the history of sex is simple. Due to a crippling fear of sin and a complete ignorance of their own bodies, the people of the Christian West were forced to live in a state of sexual repression for many centuries. Those who failed to uphold the high moral standards that were expected of them by the church, the state, and society were shunned and punished. The history of human sexuality is actually much wilder and more interesting. The false assumption that our medieval ancestors lived in an age of religious fanaticism and medical ignorance is the source of many widely held assumptions about their sexual behavior. While it is true that Christian ideals had an impact on medieval views on sex, these influences were more nuanced than popular misconceptions would have us believe. Long before the sexual revolution, Christian beliefs and medieval medical theories interacted to shape some surprising and sophisticated ideas about sex and a wide range of different sexual practices. For example, orgasm in females were highly valued. Medieval sexual norms actually required a female to orgasm every time because they believed that the only legitimate goal of sex is procreation, and that this can only happen if both partners orgasm. Of course, there was a catch. Any sexual pleasure other than the actual climax was strongly discouraged. The only acceptable pose was the missionary, and partners were expected to be fully clothed. Kissing was deemed improper, and foreplay was forbidden. There were areas where having extramarital sex was acceptable. People were indeed sexually active enough for a society to ignore extramarital affairs. Female virginity was not considered to be as important of a requirement for marriage for the common people as it was, say, for the aristocracy. As a result, dating culture and teenage sex flourished in the middle and the lower classes of society, where there was a greater sense of relaxation. The act would be referred to as simple fornication if a man and woman were both single, suggesting that it was not a big deal. Even though they were not entirely legal, such relationships were common, frequently completely tolerated, and even when they were sanctioned by the law, they were only punished with fines. Nobles valued female virginity more because it was frequently a prerequisite for marriage, but they also engaged in extramarital affairs of either sex. Male affairs were, of course, tolerated more, so men frequently had concubines, including those in the clerical profession. Cemetery orgies and sex cults both existed. It was thought that the Cathar heresy, which was common in some regions of Europe, had a very lax attitude towards having sex outside of marriage. In fact, they allegedly did not differentiate between adultery and marital sex as long as a pregnancy did not complicate matters, which is a rather lax attitude even by mainstream standards of today. While prostitution was viewed as a sinful act in medieval Europe, it was tolerated as a necessary evil in urban areas. Regulations concerning prostitutes residing in brothels, which were a part of the Nuremberg city ordinances from around 1470, are one example of prostitution laws that still apply today. One paragraph reads, "Also, the brothel keeper, man and woman, must provide the women living in their house with chambers, bed linens, and decent food. And they must feed them 2 meals a day, and at every meal 2 decent dishes. And for such expenses, each common woman living in the brothel must give the brothel keeper separately the sum of 42 pence weekly, whether she uses the food or not. In addition, the brothel keeper must make and hold a bath at least once a week in the house for the women living in the house, and this at his expense, not the women's." Where did people have sex during the Middle Ages? The lack of privacy in medieval homes and communities may have made it challenging for a couple to find a private space for intimacy. According to Ruth Mazo Carras, the church, safe, dry, and deserted for much of the day, might have been the equivalent of the back seat of a car. The use of a condom or anything else that hinders ejaculation naturally is condemned by the church, both then and now. However, historians have discovered records of condom use back then as well. Nevertheless, managing STDs was the main objective. However, let me assure you that those condoms then were nothing like those in the present. Animal bladders, intestines, and linen were used in their construction. And unlike today, they were repeatedly used. Thank you all so much for watching. We love and appreciate you all. If you can like, share, and subscribe, it would mean a lot to us. Have a wonderful day